25%. Shorty gave me a free one.
Really? No. Well, she's going to charge you at the end. So coming up now is Kellyanne Conway. Don't ask me how I know.
I think we have. There's Kellyanne. Hey, Kellyanne. Hi.
Great to see you
on the couch today.
I know. Yeah, what's going on with that? We thought you were going to be in studio, but I know you have a lot to do. What job are you going to have in the White House?
It's the transition to a new government.
How's that going?
In town.
That's true.
How's it going?
It's going beautifully. The transition team is working. I mean, we feel like we're still trying to win the upper Midwest. We're so busy. And but anyway, you're trying to form a new government, and Mr. Trump, President-elect Trump, love the sound of that, by the way. Let me say it again. President-elect Trump is very busy taking interviews, speaking with heads of state, talking to different people who may serve in his cabinet and his senior team, and he's really fitting so nicely into the role.
So, Kellyanne, that's why I was pretty stunned to get this report. I thought the president was great right in the Rose Garden. Then after meeting with Donald Trump, I thought his tone was perfect, as did Hillary Clinton's. And then this story comes out in the Wall Street Journal. According to an unnamed source, during their private meeting between President and Donald Trump, Mr. Obama walked his successor through the duties of running the country. And Mr. Trump seemed surprised by the scope and said people familiar with the meeting, Trump aides were described by those people as unaware the entire presidential staff working in the West Wing had to be replaced at the end of Mr. Obama's term. Is that true, as you know it?
Well, it's unfair and it's also untrue. Everyone is well aware of what happens in the West Wing and elsewhere within a new president's administration. And it sounds like that comes from the staff level. People like to leak to the media, don't we all know it? But I would just focus on the two men at hand, the president and the president-elect. And I think the rapport that they built last week, even though they're political nemesis, I get that, they have a shared love of the country and a shared love of a peaceful transition in our democracy, which elevated Donald Trump to the presidency in a not even close election. What does that mean? What it means is you hear President Obama trying very earnestly to respect the will of the people. He did it yesterday in his press conference again, where he very clearly said, I look at Donald Trump as pragmatic, not ideological. Wow, what a message that should send to the throngs of protesters, not my president, people accusing he and his senior staff of being things that they're not and saying things that they don't believe. I think it's an incredibly powerful message all the way from the top in President Obama, who recognizes that he's not a political hack, he's the president, and he's trying to help the president-elect transition into power.
Is your sense that he's doing so sincerely based on those reports? That he really is earnestly wants to make sure you guys come in to succeed?
It certainly it seems that way. That's every report I got from President-elect Trump himself. He could not say enough warmly about the welcome and the advice that he received from President Obama. And also, I've spoken to Mrs. Trump about her meeting with First Lady Michelle Obama, which was also spectacular. They just very much the Trump family very much appreciated being received so graciously. And these are people who run for president because they love the country and they want to serve. And I think you'll see that. It wasn't lost on me yesterday. I mean, President Obama threw a little bit of shade Hillary Clinton's way, as did Bernie Sanders earlier in the day on ABC's The View. They're both sort of signaling to her that she didn't do well politically because she didn't understand the cultural changes. She didn't understand, didn't really misread America and what the electorate was looking for. They weren't looking for celebrities. They weren't looking for vitriol about the other candidate. They were looking for a substantive conversation about issues. And it is my Republican Party and our President-elect Donald Trump that now legitimately represent the working man, working woman, forgotten man, forgotten woman. If you look at the statistics from this election, over 300 electoral votes, that's just amazing. But look at the governorships, majority Republican, 69 of the 99 state legislative chambers are Republican. There are only 4 states in this country right now that have both a Democratic governor and a Democratic state legislature. 4.
Wow.
So
Kellyanne,
people are telling us something about policy.
I want to ask you about the kids, because a lot of people are just fascinated with the Trump children and their success. We're getting reports that the Trump team is seeking top-secret security clearance for the children. I want to know if that's true. And also, is Barron going to enroll in school down in D.C., or is he going to stay here in New York?
Well, on the matter of top-secret security, I don't know a lot about that topic, Ainsley, beyond what I read. And it sounds to me, based on what I read and know, that that was an informal question that was posed by someone. It was not, it doesn't sound like it was a formal request. And again, somebody leaked it. I don't know if to embarrass or stir up trouble. But look, the Trump children will be very supportive of their father and his presidency. I know people see them publicly, but they don't really know how much these 4 adult children Ivanka,
right.
Tiffany, Don Jr., and Eric were out there, and their spouses, by the way, out there actively campaigning for Donald Trump.
No, I agree, Kellyanne, but I just want to bring it to that real quick, because it would make total sense that he'd want them by his side, and to be able to confide in them, they would need top-secret clearance. And that's something President Trump would be able to do, but yet someone's got to run the company, and he only trusts them to run the company. How would that be resolved, do you think?
Well, they're discussing that, and that's their business, and I know that they will make public what their decisions are. But obviously, they have a team of advisors who are counseling them on how best to do this. But at the same time, and look, they are full small P partners within the company, meaning this has been a family business at the Trump Organization for decades. They all have very senior roles. They are all in charge of buildings and acquisitions. Ivanka obviously separately even has her own line of clothing and jewelry, etc. So this is an uber successful family as entrepreneurs and business people, but you can expect them to support their presidency. I've talked to Mrs. Trump about their plans, and she will make her decision about her 10-year-old son, who's now in 5th grade, in due time. But she's there to support her husband's presidency. She also is actively interviewing for the First Lady's staff. So things are really churning up there at Trump Tower and here in D.C.
Kellyanne, one name we hear all the time is Rudy Giuliani. There was a lot of expectation he might for a certain role, but we're hearing him for another, potentially, Secretary of State. What can you say about that?
Well, that's possible. And Mayor Giuliani and I both happened to be the speakers last night at a CEO Council Wall Street Journal event here in Washington. So he said publicly that he would not be Attorney General. His name certainly has been mentioned in a serious way in connection with Secretary of State, a job that he's qualified for and a job that he would do exceedingly well. He has one of, 8, 10 advisors that were very close to Donald Trump throughout this campaign. It's a very small group of us. And I know that he would serve the president according to his best and highest use. Well,
it's going to be fascinating to see who does what. I'm also fascinated to see the outrage this time is coming across because Steve Bannon was named as chief strategist, and it keeps on associating him with headlines from Breitbart and labeling him. Is Donald Trump, or you specifically, Kelly, surprised by the backlash?
I'm surprised by I'm not that surprised by the backlash, but it's so wrong. And they're cherry picking a couple of headlines here and there, and they're laying that at the feet of Bannon and Trump. This guy is a brilliant tactician, Goldman Sachs managing partner, Harvard and Georgetown degrees, and frankly, it was a big help in our campaign in getting us over the 300 electoral vote mark. I just think that people can't accept the election results, to coin a phrase. We were asking the right questions about the wrong campaign and their supporters. So those who can't accept the election results ought to listen to people like President Obama, who clearly has accepting them and is trying to move forward with the new president.
Just happy with the tone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Separately indeed. A GOP-controlled Congress now tasked with making Mr. Trump's campaign pledges a reality. But as lawmakers get back to work in Washington, are they under pressure to water down any of those proposals?
Here to weigh in on this is one of the congressmen overseeing it all, House Majority Leader Mr. Kevin McCarthy. Thank you so much, Congressman, for joining us.
Thanks for having me this morning.
You're welcome. So there were all these promises. Donald Trump ran on these promises. The voters decided that's exactly what they wanted. Now, what is Congress going to do? Because we're hearing some of these ideas. For instance, build the wall. Now we're hearing could be a fence. Some people are saying some of these things are already getting watered down. Is there truth in that?
No, not at all. We actually just went back into session yesterday, and I put together the team, actually with the Speaker and others, our staff, working on legislation now, so when we're sworn in, not waiting till when the president is sworn in, but at the very first week of January, how we are able to move the legislation needed to start building the wall.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead, Brian.
Majority Leader, I do want to bring you to something else. I know you were talking about immigration with us a few days ago, and now, of course, we have the mayors of these sanctuary cities standing up. I think there's 7 or 8 of them saying, you're not going to throw out our illegals, even though the focus should be on the criminal illegals. Listen to Rahm Emanuel right now. Yeah, he came out earlier and he said, forget it, if you want to come here, Mr. President-elect, and throw these guys out and these women out. What's your reaction to this? We're not going to get cooperation from city mayors.
Well, you know what? The murderers and others that are here illegally, they need to leave this country. And I think Rahm Emanuel needs to focus on security of Chicago, the number of murders that are taking place there. This is not new legislation that we have to move. This is just enacting current law into the process.
Mr. Majority Leader, within that, this is a controversial issue. Immigration reform, building a wall, what you do with illegals. These are tough issues. Your caucus has famously had different factions. You've got the Freedom Caucus. You've got more establishment wing, conservative wings. Is there a universe? Do you feel like almost consensus and collaboration across the caucus, or do you have any concerns that some are going to say we're not going far enough?
Well, I think you'll get a difference of opinion throughout Congress. But the one thing everybody has always agreed upon, you have to secure the border. Even when you looked at the legislation that I disagreed with that passed in the Senate, they put billions of dollars in there to have a secure border, to have a wall along the border. So I find it quite ironic that Democrats would complain against that. The first thing we have to do is to secure our border. Now, as we get into other parts of immigration reform, I'm sure there'll be difference of opinion, but who in America today believes our current immigration system is actually working? 40% of everyone that's here illegally came here legally on a visa and overstayed it. We have a system that is broken, and we need to fix it.
What about what's going on in the minds of other congressmen and congresswomen now that Donald Trump has won? Because he kept saying, no more establishment, I'm going to drain the swamp. So are you all working on pins and needles, or what's the reaction from all of you?
Now remember, the majority of the Republicans that are sitting in Congress came in 2010 in the revolution to change this country, to drain the swamp then. We are excited. When you walk around the halls of Congress, I see people so excited to finally be able to achieve what they have dreamt and why they ran for office in the first place. We're going to change this country. We're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. We tried to repeal it for more than 50 times. Now we're going to be able to achieve it. We're going to get this economy moving again, where we're going to reform, bring back and rein in those regulations that we've been fighting every step of the way with President Obama. This is a new day, a new opportunity for America. And one personal place I really want to look at is to reform the VA. The way we treat our vets is just wrong. And this is an opportunity. It's something that President-elect Donald Trump ran on.
You know,
and we've talked about this many times.
So glad you mentioned that. I have happened to be in D.C. last night, happened to accidentally run into Chairman Jeff Miller, who's chaired the House VA Committee. He had a grin ear to ear because he's been trying to fight the VA bureaucracy for years, and Barack Obama and Harry Reid have blocked it. There really is a moment now where you can move something. Do you anticipate VA movement quickly?
And Congressman P.S., he served 2 tours for our country. Pete did.
Yes. No, the way the VA system, I mean, when we first came in, we started the audit to find it's worse than what people have even said. We have gone and worked past legislation, but we have been stopped every step of the way. How we treat our veterans says about the character and morals of this nation, and it does not reflect the way we want to represent our veterans. We want to make sure they have the tools when they get back, but we want to give them the care that they deserve.
And the president yesterday said the VA has been overhauled despite what happened in Phoenix, so you guys are on totally different pages on that. You're going to have a great opportunity, Majority Leader. The clock starts soon. Thanks so much for joining us, Kevin.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
It's a big day. Ainsley's book is out, and it's even possibly a bigger day for Laura Ingraham. This might be the time that Laura Ingraham, don't say anything, is named press secretary to the future president.
You never know.
You never know. All right. Hi, Laura Ingraham.
How you doing?
We're great. How are you doing? And have you heard from Donald Trump? Are you going to get this job? And would you take it if he offered it?
Things are in flux. We'll see. It's wonderful to be considered. I've known Donald for a long time. And, I know most of the guys who are going to be in the White House with him. Steve Bannon is a good friend, an old friend. We both have competing kind of media companies. Not really competing, but we're in the same world. So I've known Steve for a long time. Kellyanne I've known for, 15, 20 years, something like that. So they're old friends. Dave Bossie's an old friend. So it's kind of old school week for me. So all of them I have enormous respect for.
Well,
and, of course, President-elect Trump.
Some of the best public servants are the unexpected ones who weren't shooting for it from the beginning. You mentioned last night a desire for public service. What would it mean to you as you consider it?
Well, I think I've done a lot of different things in my life. The last time I was in government, I clerked for Justice Thomas on the Supreme Court. I clerked on the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals in Lower Manhattan. And before that, I worked in the Department of Transportation. I led speechwriting in the last couple of years of the Reagan administration, also at the White House in domestic policy, and for Bill Bennett at the Education Department. So I have some experience in the federal government, but that was a long time ago. It's when I was, right out of college. I was a newbie, and I've been on the outside for a long time, and I love what I do. I love radio. Life's Debt is going gangbusters, so I love it. I mean, I love what I do every day. So I feel like my mom and dad are I wish they were here to kind of experience the things I've seen in the last few years, because they're no longer with us. So I thought about them a lot. I'm praying a lot, and we'll see what happens. I'm not prepared to announce anything.
The thing that, would be a huge stretch if we didn't watch Tony Snow do the same thing. And when you saw how he thrived in that with the very similar background to yours, I think that's what a lot of people thought. That makes total sense.
Yeah, I speak for 3 hours a day on the radio. I have a phenomenal coast-to-coast audience. I think a lot of times radio talk show hosts, especially those who have a national play, it's almost like a daily focus group. And we tend to see things that are coming in the culture and in the country but ahead of some other folks who spend most of their time in the big cities and don't really mix it up with the folks all over the country. So I feel like over the last 15 years in radio, this is my 15th anniversary in radio, I've learned a lot about America, and I've learned more than when I was a kid in Connecticut or up in New Hampshire at college or down here in Washington. And I love the country more than I did when I started in radio because of her people. And if I could be of help in this administration and the role makes sense for me, then I would, I'd definitely entertain that, and it'd be a great privilege to be asked.
Great. Well, it would make total sense. Let's talk about something else that didn't make much sense. I thought the president's been fantastic, from the Rose Garden to the meeting to his hour and 15-minute presser yesterday. But I was surprised about the Wall Street Journal leaks that said this, and I'll just give you an excerpt. During their private meeting, a White House meeting on Thursday, Mr. Obama walked his successor through the duties of running the country, and Mr. Trump seemed surprised by the scope. Said familiar people with the meeting. Trump aides were described by those people as unaware that the entire presidential staff working in the West Wing had to be replaced at the end of Obama's term. Does that sound credible?
No, it doesn't. I could see someone saying, and I have no personal knowledge of this, I could see someone saying, wow, that's a lot of staff.
Right.
Or all these people, what I would, someone who hasn't spent a lot of time in the White House, again, I know the White House pretty well. Like, you walk around like, wow, all these people, that's a lot of people.
Right.
So all these people have to be replaced, but you would say it as a, just kind of a throwaway line. Right. I don't believe for one moment that Donald Trump thought that Obama's staff was going to stay behind.
Yeah, that's
right.
Well, come on.
Hey, Valerie Jarrett, can you stay for 2 years until we get our feet underneath us?
And why is that a big story anyway? So he's surprised? All right, big deal.
Well, exactly. And Laura, there's a photo, I'm sure you've seen it. We're going to put it up on the screen real quick, of the Obama staff reacting to the results, arms folded, scowling. In public, Barack Obama has tried to be gracious. Have you heard anything about privately what's actually happening, whether you feel like there will be an earnest transfer to set Trump up for success?
I think the staff was obviously shocked. If you were told by the media, most in the media, that Hillary was a shoo-in, some of those staffers probably were intending to stay on. I know there are law firms in Washington, D.C. that were already expecting a good number of their partners to leave to go work for Hillary. They already hired their replacements and were at their firm. So now they have double the number of lawyers in some cases. So everyone was expecting this. They were counting their chickens before they hatched. And I understand they're very surprised. I get it. But I don't believe that they're going to steal the DJTs off the keyboards. I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be really surprised. That's such peanut stuff. And as for the, Trump being surprised about the number of people in the West Wing, this is when you're really desperate for anything negative to say about Trump. It's small potatoes, and I think we have big, important issues to solve in this country, and we got to move on to them.
You said you were good friends with Steve Bannon. You've known him for a long time. We had a panel of moms. One of the moms says he's a white supremacist. You've seen that in the mainstream media. Tell us about him, and is that true?
Front page of the New York Times today.
This is what I really hate most about Washington, is this type of smear campaign that I saw going back to, Justice Thomas. When they see someone as an ideological threat or someone who could be very, very powerful, advancing a conservative message, close to a principal or actually in a principal position, there are the piranhas that will circle around. Mm-hmm. They hope to get a little blood in the water, and then they hope for the big, the big fish to come in and kill them off. Steve Bannon is a wonderful person. He's someone who, if you're not feeling well, he'll pick up the phone and say, how you doing? How are your kids? What's going on? And he also happens to be really smart. I mean, that merry band of small, the small band of merry warriors over there at the Trump campaign, they pulled off the upset of the century. Yep. And there's a lot of sour grapes in Washington, D.C. There are a lot of envious people. I get that, but do not besmirch someone who is a patriot. He's a good man. He's smart, and he's dedicated to improving this country, which, frankly, a lot of those people maligning him, they should have spent a lot more time focusing on that themselves.
Well, Laura, that's right. I mean, a lot of people know you. They see you on television. They hear from you. Steve Bannon hasn't had as much of a public role. He also served in the Navy for 10 years, serving his country at high levels. What do you anticipate his, senior counselor, what will that look like? What do you think he will do to sort of craft what a Trump presidency looks like?
Well, I think, as we saw in the campaign, I would be very surprised if his role weren't the chief strategist for advancing the Trump agenda, both in domestic policy, economic policy, immigration policy, trade policy. Steve and Steve Miller, both, and Kellyanne, Dave Bossie as well, they're all steeped in this. They know these issues, and it's going to take some deft strategizing and really good messaging to advance this in a city that is still an establishment city. Mm-hmm. It's still filled with lobbyists. It's still filled with lawyers. It's still filled with the same special interests that existed before Trump was elected president. It's going to take a smart hand and someone who's also courageous, thinks outside the box, to use that terrible cliche, who's a little unconventional sometimes. I mean, remember people were really criticizing Trump when he went to Detroit. Yeah. Oh, how dare you do these speeches about helping African Americans? That's patronizing. Well, that was really smart that he did that, and I hope he continues to do things like that.
Yeah, and actually do things. And lastly, it's impossible to not miss the protest and the 18 to 23-year-olds who want to go walk up and down the street and walk out of their high schools. If you're Donald Trump, whatever your opinion is, what is the best way for him to address this? And is it incumbent on Hillary and Barack Obama to do more?
Well, considering Barack Obama and his Justice Department, they thought it was fine to weigh in every time there was a protest in the inner city about a shooting of an unarmed black man. It would be nice if, at the same time, they actually chimed in on this and said, look, let's everybody go home and give this administration a chance to make the country better. You might not agree with them. We get that. We can debate it. But as far as blocking streets, disrupting traffic, disrupting learning in schools, none of that's going to help anyone. So I hope we take the same attitude that we took in some of the other more controversial circumstances.
The teachers and professors are greenlighting this and pushing them forward. That's the outrageous part of it.
Absolutely. They're being penalized for having students that support Trump are also being penalized across the country.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Laura. Good.
Thanks, guys.
Ambassador, good to see you.
Good morning. Glad to be with you.
Have you spoken to anybody in Trump's circle about his cabinet selections? Can you talk to us about what the priorities are and how you see the cabinet coming together?
Well, not really.